Welcome to episode 172 of the CineSnob Podcast. I'm Jerrod Kingery.
I'm Cody Villafana.
And I'm Jocelyn Durand.
And this is the first time, if you're listening to this, sorry, but if you're watching it, it's our first time doing a video podcast. Guys, what do you think? It's been,
Cheers.
Cody's the only one drinking alcohol, I think.
Yep.
No, I am too.
Oh,
Hardcore.
That's kidding.
I think it's been a few months since I've seen Cody in person. It's been a few years since I've seen you in person, Jocelyn. So
Yep. Does this count as in person?
I guess. I don't know.
Kinda.
In like animated video form in live. I don't know. We decided to give this a shot to see how it worked, and it so far looks pretty cool. We got a nice little layout here. Jocelyn, if you look to your right, look to your left, the CineSnob logo is right beside you. So
That's right. I'm very impressed. You guys did all of this. I can take no credit. So good job.
It took like 10 minutes to do. So don't be.
It took me
Not
days
according
of
to
research.
Cody. Yeah.
Well, Cody. Look, let me tell you something a little about Cody that you need to understand going forward. Cody will research the shit out of something and go down a rabbit hole like a crazy person, God bless him, because he does all the heavy lifting for this stuff. And I'm just like, sure, let's give it a try. And Cody's like, no, well, I got this thing and I'm trying to do this. And it's a solution we came up with here. Now, I think it looks pretty cool. Our cameras
Apparently web cameras are like completely sold out.
Yeah, yours looks the best, Jocelyn.
Yeah, for sure.
And but you looks like you have the most light in your room.
Like
and
natural
plus
light
you have,
and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Plus you have the MMJ background, so you know
Exactly.
how
So
to
that's
set it up.
important to me.
Me, I'm in a dark cave of crap, and man, my face is really blasting out there.
You have the best stuff to look at, though.
Thank you.
You know what's kind of fun for anyone watching at home is that Jerrod and I have the same poster in our back behind us.
Oh yeah.
The Lego movie.
It's a Lego movie. But
I have Stan Lee right there too.
Uh-huh.
And
Rest
Transformers.
in peace.
Rest in peace, Stan Lee.
Rest in
There's
peace,
my Conan
Stan.
O'Brien mug back there. So yeah, other than talking about this video thing, anything new to talk about movie-wise? As having been sort of talking about this before, Santikos theaters are still open there in San Antonio, and y'all can actually go to movies in San Antonio.
Yeah.
But here in Austin, everything still remains closed. Is there a chance you think, as things get worse? I know we talked about this before, but what would it take to get you out to a movie theater now?
Definitely Relic, which we're going to talk about soon. That's number one priority for me.
Yeah, I have a boring answer, which is, I assuming that we're not talking like having a vaccine, right? We're talking about
We're talking about like if it's like you had to go wear a mask and sit, 6 seats apart, or, however far apart. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
not in a perfect world, but in this world that we're in now.
It would have to be like they're giving you wipes when you enter the building, so you know that you can wipe down your own area. It would have to be masks required inside the theater, even, and it would have to be like distanced, like you have to have like a couple seats between you and the other person, guaranteed. And then even then, I'm not even sure I'm down with it, but
like 25% capacity.
Yeah.
It'd be like going to like at the Sunday morning showing of something at all times.
Right.
Sorry, Cody, by the way, we can barely see your gag hat.
I did see
in
it
your
10
shots.
yards.
This is a
Cody's
bit
been-
that...
It's been months in the making, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, it was this is a little inside baseball. Nobody's supposed to know this, but I find there was a bit that Greg Turkington does on Cinema at the Cinema, where he essentially is always wearing a hat of some shitty movie that really cracks me up. What is it in Mr. America? Do you remember?
I don't remember. Hold on, I'm gonna get you out of this mode here because there we go. I was just playing around with was trying to get your whole hat. I don't remember,
That was
but
cool. It was like a direction that you.
Yeah, it's like switching. So so get ready, Jocelyn. You're going full screen.
Well, now I have to say something.
Yeah. I don't remember, Cody, but the running gag was in Mr. America that Greg Turkington had like a shitty promo hat on all the time.
Yeah, and I think Jerrod and I both come from the school of thinking that shitty promo material is really funny, like finding like random socks for Schindler's List or whatever. So what I decided that I was going to do was when I went to movie screenings, like with our critics friends, I was going to buy a whole bunch of really obscure bad movie hats and just wear them, but never comment on it. Just like show up in a different hat every time. And then, of course, this hit, and I loaded up on hats. I've got I've got a bunch of hats that I haven't been able to wear yet. So, this is the debut of the first one.
I'm trying to pull 10 yards.
I did. It's the funniest one.
They're surprisingly expensive, I think, is what we came to realize. Because I have a
$10 limit.
Yeah, I was looking them up just for shits and giggles for you, and it was. By the way, I'm looking up Greg Turkington. It's a hat for the Guy Pearce Time Machine.
That's right.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
I'm like grade A stealing someone's bit, but it's who cares.
I think Schindler's List was a good one too. That would be ridiculous if you had a hat for Schindler's List.
I have in my bathroom. I have a "This Is 40" robe. That's my robe. If I ever wear a robe, I think some of the best, craziest ones I ever saw was for the movie Don John. Do you remember this, Cody?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's his name? Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and he was like sex addicted.
I saw that. I think I reviewed that movie.
And
was obscure.
Some of the merch was sex cleanup towels.
Well, at least it's on brand. What does This Is 40 have to do with a robe, I guess, because you're old and you like a robe?
I think isn't there like a scene where he's Paul Rudd is in a robe and has Leslie Mann look at his butt? Or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that. Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. I mean, it's a nice robe. There's Cody, Ryan Fonz from Fonz PR.
Mm-hmm.
He's a local PR guy here in Austin. He's always wearing a Gods of Egypt shirt. Was that the one with Stanley Tucci as the Pharaoh?
Oh, man, what is Gods of Egypt? Why am I not recalling that?
I thought that was the Bible story with Christian Bale. I don't remember, but it's it's such a shitty movie.
Because I was thinking of Exodus, but that was the Ridley Scott thing.
Yeah, that's an older one. This Gods of Egypt, I believe, was like, it might have been Ridley Scott. I don't know.
Well, Ridley Scott did Exodus. It was called Exodus: Gods and Men or something like that.
Yeah. Let me look it up. Gods.
All of these sound vaguely familiar.
Yeah, this is. Let's see. Gods of Egypt was released in 2016. Oh, so it's Alex Proyas is the director, of course, of The Crow and Dark City and I believe iRobot. Anyway, it's stars Gerard Butler, Nikolai Coster-Waldau, Brendan Thwaites, Chadwick Boseman. Man, Jeffrey.
Really? Chadwick Boseman?
Jeffrey Rush played Ra.
Wow, that's crazy.
Oh, you know what? You saying that made me remember that movie. I remember I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah. I thought I could have sworn. Oh no, it wasn't Stanley Tucci. It was John Turturro. I could have sworn John Turturro was in it, playing the Pharaoh.
Yeah, it was super borderline racist.
Oh no.
Yeah. Which was maybe this is not the one I'm thinking of because I think.
Are you
Christian
sure it's not
Bale
Exodus? Is the one I'm thinking of that has John Turturro in it?
I'm looking it up now because it was something. I swear it also had Christian Bale in it. Oh, it is Exodus: Gods and Kings. You're right.
Gods
I
and
thought that
Kings, fuck.
I thought that movie was older. So yeah,
No. That was like
2014. 2014. So it's directed by Ridley Scott. Has Christian Bale, Joel
Ben
Edgerton.
Mendelsohn is super in Egyptian type stuff. It's very problematic.
They're literally. Listen to this cast of the whitest people you can find. It's Christian Bale, Joel Edgerton, John Turturro, Aaron Paul.
Oh my God, Aaron Paul? He's the whitest of the white.
Ben Mendelsohn, Sigourney Weaver, and Ben Kingsley. And it was inspired.
That's
Ben.
Aaron Paul in the movie.
I knew it. I was like, I bet they just put a lot of eyeliner on them, and then they just are like, there you go.
Look up John Turturro as the Pharaoh.
Oh my God, look at Joel Edgerton.
Oh God, he looks like fucking Yul Brynner.
That's
Yeah, he
problematic.
totally does.
Yeah,
I like this visual element. This is fun.
Yeah.
Too.
Sorry if you're listening to this because it's not.
Nerds.
Yeah.
You know what? We actually have some mild movie news to talk about.
Oh yeah, let's talk about it because that's
Mild
what is it, Cody?
It was released, or at least reported, that there was going to be an extension of Matt Reeves' Batman universe on HBO Max, where Terrence Winter will be, I think, both writing and directing some kind of Gotham Police Department show that's set in the world of the Matt Reeves, the Batman that's coming up. So.
Oh yeah. That's kind of the multi-platform approach. I think like Disney Plus is doing, where they're expanding this film universe into the TV side of it. If you can even really call streaming TV, I don't know that that's necessary. I mean, I guess that's the natural.
Well, Jerrod, it's not TV; it's HBO.
Now we're calling HBO Normal and HBO Max in my house.
You know what pisses me off is
Like, it's on HBO Normal.
so they're getting rid of HBO Go on the Roku boxes. So like I
Because
have
of
HBO
Max.
Go on my Roku. It's like, sorry, at the end of July this thing's not going to work anymore. But there's no HBO Max replacement for it. So
HBO and Roku are in a dick measuring contest right now, and it's not going well.
I don't get it. I don't quite understand.
I don't know.
At any rate, this kind of brings up what we talked about a few weeks ago with The Flash and Michael Keaton possibly being in it. And I'm curious to know if either of you care, and I know the answer for Cody because we talked about it, but either of you care that this is sort of the approach that DC might be taking, that they're making this stuff just sort of what's working and not trying to follow the Marvel formula anymore.
Right. I personally think that's what they did, from the beginning, that it's always just kind of been a money turning factory for them. And this is like that's why I don't get invested in it, because I feel like they don't care about the fans or anything other than like, oh, this is successful, now let's make 5 of them. And this wasn't, let's just like throw it away. So it for me, there's no focus on like actual art or like I know that's kind of a shortcut to it, but
I think that's a little unfair because I think there is some good filmmaking in there.
Right. No, for sure. But that's not what I mean by art, but I mean that's not what's driving them. If there was, if there was a better movie that was unsuccessful, I don't think they would head in that direction because of it. I think it's like following the dollar. But that's just how I see it, and I know I'm not a fan, so I can't. But that's why I try not to get invested, because I feel like it's just going to screw me over in the end.
Yeah, I do like having the just sort of multi-level approach as a counterpoint to what Marvel is doing, where everything is connected to everything, and you got to have all the pieces together to understand what's happening. I think it's since they couldn't really reverse engineer it successfully, I think it's a good direction to go. But Cody, I think you have a different opinion.
Well, I think it's just confusing. For one, to have parallel. So, the idea being that, you and I got into the weeds with multiverse stuff, which I don't think we need to get into here. But it's the idea that, when you have parallel Batman stories, for example, so like you have Ben Affleck doing Batman stuff while you also have Robert Pattinson doing Batman stuff, while you also have, multiple iterations of maybe Batman villains or things like that. Plus, you have the TV universe that exists, like on the CW type stuff. And I think, and even like, I don't think Gotham is on anymore, right? But you have that going on.
Yeah.
And I don't know, because I feel like at some point, it wasn't seen as being spread out, but now that Marvel has everything so self-contained, and it's become like the standard, I feel like it's now getting to be a little bit too spread out to where it doesn't feel cohesive, and it feels like it's not a singular vision, and I think it's harder to track. But I'm that being said, I'm looking forward to this because I've been a Matt Reeves stan for quite some time, as you know.
I hate the word stan. God,
I know.
It's not even a positive. Like, it's based on the Eminem song, right? It's not even a positive thing.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, no, I use it because you hate it, but
no, I know.
As a Matt Reeves stan, I mean, I think it should be interesting, and then Terrence Winter brings a lot of credibility to it, and we'll see what happens. I think that the idea of an extended universe between TV, if you want to call it that again, but streaming and movies is a good one, and I think that it can work. It just depends on, are we going to have this, and then, is Justice League Snyder Cut going to revamp that interest and then bring Ben Affleck back, and then now suddenly you've got, two Batmans at the same time, and then it becomes a clusterfuck, but I don't know.
If it's successful, I don't think that, I think they'll try anything if it's making money.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see, I assume with Terrence Winter on board, it'll be more of a underworld mafia type story,
right? Since
that's his background. But I'm all for it. If I could get HBO Max easily without having to use a different, like a Google what's that thing called, Chromecast, or a different box, I'd be watching a whole lot more of it. But it's being a pain in the ass right now with not being on Roku. So
just switch to Apple TV.
I had an Apple TV, but it's...
Don't you have a Shield?
I have a Shield too, yeah, but it's not.
Okay, well, load it on the Shield, you lazy
Look,
ass.
man, I've got three different TVs in this house.
Oh, wow!
So.
Excuse me, Mr.
Moneybags
Fancy
McGee over here.
Yeah, there's one back behind me right there. I don't even leave it on.
How many bathrooms do you have?
Hey, fuck you, Cody. There's a TV right behind you. You told me, like under a towel.
No, there's two of them. They're facing each other.
Oh, they're kissing. We have two bathrooms, so Jocelyn.
Not that impressive.
Yeah.
More TVs and bathrooms.
I have 2.5. So.
Oh, and a pool. Oh.
We bought the house for the pool, though, so it was a pool and a house was attached.
Hey, I hate to break it to you, but a pool is also a bathroom.
Ew.
Anything else? Anything else? Movie
point for Jerrod. Bathroom humor.
I forgot.
Oh, it's bathroom humor. Oh man.
Oh, shit.
You fucked up.
I need that little around the horn point thing.
Damn, that's a great reference. I like that.
I haven't watched that show in years, but
yeah.
Anyway, anything else before we move on?
No.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to reviews. First up this week, we have Greyhound. Yeah, Greyhound. Sorry. First up this week, we have Greyhound.
We have hits directly on the convoy.
The Wolfpack's hunting us.
U-boat, starboard bound!
In 48 hours, we've lost 7 ships and 50 souls.
What you did yesterday got us to today.
It's not enough. Not nearly enough.
Fires they bear!
This is a World War II movie starring Tom Hanks. Should be a staple of every Father's Day gift from now to eternity. But it instead of debuting theatrically, it debuted on Apple TV Plus. Jocelyn, since you were ragging me about getting an Apple TV, I'm going to let you tell us about Greyhound and tell us what you thought of it.
Yeah, that's funny that you said the Father's Day thing, because as I was watching it, I was thinking of texting my dad and being like, hey, there's a new movie you got to watch. So this takes place in the early 40s, 1942, 1943, so it's the end of World War II. And this is when there started to be a lot of fighting in the mid-Atlantic between, of course, the Germans, the British, and the Americans. So Tom Hanks is the captain of a destroyer vessel, I believe is what it is. And his ship starts getting under fire from some U-boats. They're called, I know
the
this.
Wolf Pack.
Thank you. They're called wolf packs because they kind of hunt in packs. And so that's basically the gist of it. Historically, they're trying to get over to England. And really the action in this movie starts like right away. There's only like a little bit at the beginning that isn't related to him being on the ship. And then they're on the ship and they are under attack. And then the rest of the movie is just consistently kind of being under attack from these German U-boats. So what else am I missing? I guess I can start telling y'all what I thought about it.
Well, the basic gist of it, right, is that there's a black hole in the middle of the Atlantic where they can't have air support from the United States.
Yes, thank
until
you.
They
it's
get
kind of a no man's land.
Yeah, so there's this space in between that they have to navigate with only themselves.
They have to defend themselves. Exactly.
Right.
There's no air cover until a certain point off the shore. So yeah, for me, I mean, seeing Tom Hanks in a war movie is like putting on a nice robe. Like, it's so comforting. It's like chicken
This Is
soup.
40 robe, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. Or like one of the robes in his that his character wears. I kind of love that detail. Like when they're like under attack and when all the action is happening, he's constantly asking for like these like a nice robe or his slippers or these like real luxuries that I just kind of like thought was a cool little detail. But other than that, let me think. Tom Hanks in a war movie. I mean, you can't go wrong. It is what it is. It's exactly what you would expect. Some cons for me. Personally, I thought this was distracting. I don't know if y'all noticed the like whale sounds that were playing underneath in the score. I think they were trying to make it seem like that was the sonar that they were using to detect the submarines. But I think they were obviously trying to make the submarines kind of like an animal, because I even texted Cody, I think, that this was like War Jaws for me. It was like all of a sudden the submarines were like a shark because they're like, just like at the last minute going underneath the boats and like you can see from their perspective only occasionally. If Jaws was able to then radio and taunt the Americans during it, which was kind of cool too.
You haven't seen Jaws you haven't seen Jaws the Revenge, I take it.
No, was he German? The shark? Did he have a German accent?
No, but he was clearly like specifically hunting a person.
This wasn't the one at SeaWorld, right?
No, this is the one with that one's crazy weird.
Yeah.
The Revenge is crazy stupid, and it has Michael Caine. Famously, Michael Caine was making that movie when he won an Oscar and didn't show up to pick up his Oscar because he was making Jaws the Revenge.
Well,
working on
you
his next
gotta
one.
pick your battles. So no, I don't think I saw that one.
He said he bought it. He said he bought a house with it, so or with the money.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like we'll get into Danny Trejo. You can't turn down a paycheck. But no. So yeah, that element to it when they're trying to like kind of make it like almost like a beast onto itself. I don't know if it really worked for me, but all in all, and despite a really kind of cheesy Disney-like, ending, it's it's a little like sugar-coated ending where I was kind of just trying to, like pretend that wasn't happening. I thought it was great. And I think it was repetitive as far as like continually being under attack, but I think the time was perfect. If it had continued on longer, I would have been bored out of my mind. But I think the length of it was just like perfect for what it was.
Cody?
Yeah, I mean, it's lean and mean. It's 88 minutes, I think, or maybe even 90 minutes on the dot. It's fine. That's the best way I can put it. It is aggressively fine. The problem that it has is that it's basically a war movie, but it's almost entirely rooted in strategy, right? So I was talking to Kiko, our friend and former member of this podcast, and we basically at the same time said it's like a live action game of Battleship. Like it's 100% strategy, and the problem is that it's repetitive, right? So it's just the same thing over and over again, where they're essentially trying to track the U-boats, and then they're trying to avoid the attacks from the U-boats, and then they're trying to fire back at the U-boats. Rinse and repeat. 5-6 times.
Well, what did you expect? I mean, like aliens aren't going to come down and try to, it's.
Well, but I don't
That's what it's
necessarily. Yes, but also there's no character development at any.
Right.
Like you don't like Tom Hanks's character is a blank slate that has more quirks, like personality quirks, than he does story or development or narrative or arc or anything. Like there's no character arc, there's no narrative arc to any of this. So, and I don't know if that has something to do with Hanks being the screenwriter, and maybe he just should not have written the movie. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but to me, it is, and it looks great. It's very tense, and I think the best thing that it does is that it does build tension really well. And I think that, as a quick 90-minute movie, there are times where it's pretty gripping, kind of like the last hour of The Outpost. But to me, it's just the same thing over and over again. And anytime there's like story injected into it, it seems like it doesn't really matter. And we don't know anything more about Tom Hanks's character when we started, or when it ends than when it started. So again, I think it's totally okay. It's the biggest dad movie since Ford versus Ferrari, and this is gonna be like a TBS Father's Day or TNT Father's Day staple for years to come.
Yeah, I'm gonna say kind of the same thing. It's a little repetitive. It kind of reminds me. I don't think either of you have seen this. The Battlestar Galactica remake.
No, I don't think so.
Oh,
it's
don't
not
laugh
the one
at
with
me.
Denise Richards.
No,
Oh,
you're
no, that was
thinking of-
Stormship Troopers. Sorry.
Battlestar Galactica. It's a renowned TV series starring Edward James Olmos.
Right.
Anyway, the first episode of it is called 33, and the by the way, just so you know, the show is very, very heavy on the biblical references, so you can probably figure out what 33 gets you to.
Refers to, yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, the idea was this: they're a battleship. They're in space, and every 33 minutes they're being pursued by the enemy, the Cylons, and they have to escape them every 33 minutes. And it has this same tension like that. That it's a crew that hasn't been sleeping, and the same thing keeps happening and happening and happening. That said, at the beginning of a TV series, that's the first episode of the TV show proper, and I think that can help set the tone. But I think as a movie, it's a little much, and I think it makes the movie feel a little slight. Also, being 90 minutes long, you don't really get a sense of anyone's. There's no characters here. Frankly, the most we know about Tom Hanks's character is that he's apparently very religious, and he has I don't know what sort of his relationship with Elizabeth Shue's character is.
I didn't get that at all either.
If they're dating or something.
He also doesn't eat.
Well, I think the idea was that it's his first command, and he's filled with tension and just trying to to do too much, and I don't think that's effectively communicated as well as it should be. Probably another, it's a rare case that I say a movie should be longer. And I think this one probably could have been a little bit longer to kind of flesh out the characters a little bit more than we got. Because there's, like, Tom Hanks is great. Stephen Graham, who plays the XO. I love Stephen Graham, and he's been in 10,000 things. I think, was he in Capone? I don't remember.
I believe he was.
I know he played Al Capone in Boardwalk Empire, but he's in Pirates of the Caribbean, all kinds of stuff. And that's a great little. He's got a great little moment in there when he's plotting courses and stuff. But for the most part, we're centered on Hanks and just this jargon-heavy performance where everything is, everything is barked out in real naval commands and everything, and it's a little dense at that point. But it's aggressively fine, I think, is probably the the biggest thing. One of the things that really bothered me was the effects for the boats. I don't know if the two of you noticed this, but for some reason we were like, every shot that was really far away was really bothersome to me, and it didn't really have the impact I thought that it would have otherwise had they. Because there's like aerial shots of, like, they're clearly, they're CGI obviously, but it's like it's 5,000 feet in the air looking down at these boats, and I just don't get it. But anyway, grades, Jocelyn.
Yeah, I thought I liked that it didn't really kind of overly explain a lot of things. It just got in and out, and that's what it was. And I did like that the Stephen Graham character was kind of there to provide a little bit of background for the character, that they had this previous relationship. I thought that was kind of cool, and it wasn't like hitting you over the head with it. I gave it a B.
Cody.
I think that it being fine is enough to make it. Well, look, I mean, if it would have kept this kind of pace and story and lack of detail, and it would have been longer, I think we would have had a problem. It being 88 minutes really helps make that go down a little bit more smoothly. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I think it's not a waste of time. I think that it's again fine. I think that I wish that there was more from Tom Hanks. It's not a bad performance by any means, but it is nothing special. I think you could have put any other actor in that role, and it would have been about the same. So that being said,
Josh Gad,
especially Josh Gad.
I think that's giving Tom Hanks not enough credit, because I think he makes it look that easy, that's like how good he is at this.
Yeah, I disagree with that too, Cody, but go ahead.
That's fine.
But continue.
Get sauced. What's your grade?
I give it a B-. It's fine.
I'm giving it a B. It's fine. I don't have anything else to say. It's fine. But it is available exclusively on Apple TV Plus now. Coming to TNT every Father's Day, Memorial Day, Veterans Day in the future. Okay, let's move on to our next movie, Palm Springs.
Ja, slant.
Alright, you with me?
No, Alejandro, remember so lot. We ended their good. No, let's get start with like an 8. How weary.
It's gonna be a beautiful wedding.
This was your favorite movie of the year so far, Cody, as you mentioned in a previous episode. So tell us about Palm Springs and what you thought of it.
Well, it was in my top 5 of the year so far. It's not number 1; it's probably 4 or 5. But yeah, so essentially, to break down Palm Springs in this most simplest terms, it is a bit of a take on the Groundhog Day story, where we have a repetition, a day that's repeating. So basically, we have these two characters, one played by Andy Samberg, and he's a guest at a wedding, and then we have Kristen Milioti, who is the sister of the bride. And basically what happens is he is stuck in a time loop where the day of the wedding is repeating over and over again. and through certain means, she also gets stuck in the time loop with him, and they try to navigate their way through the repetition, and I don't know if I don't even that is giving a lot away, and I think a lot of the movie is best served as a surprise. I think the first thing to address with the movie is that it is inherently derivative. I mean, there's no way to talk about the movie without thinking about Groundhog Day, which has kind of become a classic, not only a classic movie, but anytime a movie that has like a time loop or a repetition thing, it's always going to be the first movie that's mentioned. Even when Edge of Tomorrow came out, it was a totally sci-fi take on that story, and everyone said, it's sci-fi Groundhog Day. There's no way around it. That being said, I do think it's telling a different story and touching on different themes than Groundhog Day does. And I think part of that has to do with at what point we meet the characters. So there is a scene of, because I mean, it's not readily apparent by the beginning of the movie that there's a time loop going on. And then there's a scene where it kind of comes into focus involving Andy Samberg dancing. And I love that scene. I think the intro to the time loop in that scenario is brilliant and really funny. And I think that the movie really gets by on the chemistry between Samberg and Milioti, who she is the best part of the movie by far. And I think that she's able to be equal parts exasperated, but also kind of silly and goofy while having dramatic chops. I just think it's a really good performance. The movie also has a really specific and irreverent sense of humor, which I appreciated. Like there's a scene, I'll just give two hints to scenes. One involves Andy Samberg and Peter Gallagher. That's a cutaway joke that's really funny. And the other is a scene with J.K. Simmons talking about his son, which was just a very stupid but very funny
I feel like
joke.
that one was in the trailer, wasn't it?
Oh, was it? It might have been.
So.
Yeah. And but just in case it's not, I don't want to spoil it. But it's got a really irreverent sense of humor, and I think that it touches on a lot of interesting themes about, one of the things that you see. It's more of an arc with Groundhog Day because you see him kind of realize it, and then you see him kind of take advantage of it, and then you see him kind of get tired of it, and then and when you meet Andy Samberg's character and realize he's in this loop, you get this sense of like malaise, like you get this. There's even conversations about how can't we just when Milioti gets in there, it's like, can't we just skip this step? So it has a lot to do with thematically of complacency, and it has a lot to do with like living with regret and things like that. And I just found the whole thing to be extremely charming. I think it's a really charming, really sweet movie. I think it's really funny. I think it's an inventive take on an older story that already exists. And yeah, I just found myself like really, really enjoying almost every part of it. I think the end is a little bit ridiculous, and I think it wraps up maybe a little bit too neatly. But that being said, I mean, I think the two of these two actors together is really something special.
Jocelyn.
Yeah, I think just on top of everything, it does also have some like philosophical elements that I was surprised that it kind of explored. And that goes, kind of into, of course, the ending and the solution, and someone like, taking charge of their destiny, basically. And even though the premise is a little ridiculous at the end, I mean, you have to suspend belief for the entire movie. So by that point, you're just kind of like, okay, this is going to happen. And I like that Cody mentioned the dance scene for when you kind of start realizing that Andy Samberg is in this loop, because the dance scenes were my favorite parts of the movie. There was two, and the second one is when I really kind of got on board for the silliness of it. That was when I was like, okay, this is awesome, and I love what's happening. And I think there was even a Groundhog Day reference, which I was kind of glad. I don't know if y'all caught that.
I was looking for one, but I never caught one.
I noticed it when he, it's the famous "Good afternoon, good evening, and good night." No, is that from Truman Show?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's from Truman Show. Okay, maybe there wasn't one then. I'm gonna have to go back and watch. But there was something
I was
someone
specifically
said.
looking for something, and I never heard anything.
I wonder. Okay, so there's the what is the friend say in Groundhog Day? Not the friend, the guy that he sees every morning who's getting
It's like
into...
Phil Connors.
There was
Watch that
something
first
there.
step.
There's something that he says every day that really bothers him, and I wonder if maybe they made a small reference
Ned Ryerson.
to it.
Ned
Okay,
the
I'm gonna have
Head.
to do-
Needle
I'm gonna-
Jared.
Needle
I'll do
knows
some-
Ned. Dated your
Ned
sister
the
Mary
Head.
Pat until you told me to stop.
No, not it. But
Okay, well I'm
There's
out.
like
I know.
one more line left, and I think you've covered it all.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch it, and I do plan to rewatch this movie because I did like it so much. Other than that, I thought it was fun. I thought the music was great. The performances, Kristen, like Cody said, just like killed it. And Andy, who I have never been a fan of, I was like kind of on the fence with him. I didn't hate him, but I didn't love him. I think this sold him for me. And I know another friend messaged me and said the same thing, that he like despises Andy Samberg and he really liked him in this movie. So if you're not a fan of Andy Samberg, don't let that not, keep you from watching this, because he's very tolerable and actually very likable in this movie.
Okay, Cody. I'm sorry. You started, Cody. So I'm gonna go. That's right. I'm fucked up.
Yes.
Sorry. Look, I love Groundhog Day, as evidenced by my ability to quote Ned Ryerson at length. I think that it's obviously, like Cody, you mentioned, it's a classic comedy that its premise has bled over into real life. And as such, with this lockdown going on and everyone staying home, it sort of has been referenced a lot that it feels like we're living in that scenario where every day is the same, et cetera, et cetera. That being said, I think this movie is a fun take on that, but I don't really think it adds anything to it, and I don't really think it improves upon the formula in any way. Because I think that, I feel like it's too technical, evidenced by the fact that, there's this magic cave or whatever that they go into, and then are able to, there's a way that's devised that they can perhaps escape this time loop, which doesn't make any sense if you think about the experiment that a character does. I'm not going to spoil it, but it doesn't make sense. Her experiment or his experiment doesn't make sense.
Are you a quantum physicist?
I'm not, but just going by the logic of the movie itself. That being said, it's fun, and I think Milioti is the best part of the movie. I totally agree, and I've liked Andy Samberg quite a bit in the past. I think Jocelyn, you're a little unfair to Andy Samberg, but no.
No, I said I was on the fence with him. I didn't hate him, and I don't like him.
No, but I think Milioti is the best part of this, and I think when she's gone, there's a big chunk where she's not in it. I think the movie suffers from a lot of repetitiveness. There's where it kind of focuses on Samberg's character, that I think is not as enjoyable as when Milioti's there. That also kind of leaves the moral of the story, I suppose, whatever lessons learned are not really effectual, I think. Because Groundhog Day's whole point was Phil Connors was an asshole, and he was punished until he wasn't an asshole. And I think if you've ever heard or read about Groundhog Day, Harold Ramis, who directed it, said he figured Phil had been stuck there for 10 years. And I don't. The Samberg's character doesn't have doesn't kind of understand how long he's been there, and doesn't really seem to grow or change over time. And I think that's probably the biggest kind of difference and missed thing I think this movie comes up with. Or ends up with, because...
But to me, that's the entire third act of the movie, is him growing and changing and getting perspective.
Not really, though. He falls in... I don't want to spoil.
I kind of agree that it's like he is relying on the relationship that he makes with her to kind of save him almost.
Right.
Well, but it's also but the idea that he's complacent to stay inside. I mean, I don't want to get too bogged down with any details on the story, but I mean, he goes from not wanting to leave the loop because of its comfortability to thinking about the idea of taking risks. I mean, I think that's all there.
Yeah, but I didn't buy his take on not wanting to leave. I thought that rang really false. Personally, I felt like it was a weird character moment because it doesn't really kind of reflect what I think would be the attitude. I don't think holding its logic up is, failing it, I think. And I think the movie doesn't do any favors by trying to add too much to that, like trying to explain how things work. And I think it moves a little too fast through it. Because there's the most kind of touching part of it is J.K. Simmons' sort of arc, I think. And he's a relatively minor character, but I think his arc changes his character too much, too quickly, and I don't really quite understand why. And I think that's just... I think the movie moves too fast, and I think it doesn't quite set any kind of precedent for what is making these people change. And I think that's... it's fun, and I think Miliotti's great, and I really like Andy Samberg, but I think that its heart is undercut a little bit by the technicalities.
I wonder if it's like being able to live in a world without consequences, though, and that's why the J.K. What's his name?
J.K. Simmons?
Thank you. His character changes so quickly because nothing matters. So one day you're, this horrible person. The next day you can have a brand new day. And the same with Andy not wanting to leave. It's like, I can live in this world with this girl now, finally, who is my partner. I have a partner in this ridiculousness, and I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, and nothing matters.
But he does mention that, though. He does mention the consequences. Andy Samberg's character. There's a scene where they're sitting on the side of the road after encountering J.K. Simmons' character, and he talks about the consequences of, the mental consequences of it, which I think was an interesting thing to touch on, but I don't think the movie really does anything with that. And I think it uses that as a shortcut for J.K. Simmons' arc that I don't really totally buy into all the way, just because I think it takes a lot of shortcuts that I don't think it really earns. But it's still a fun movie. Anyway, grades, Cody.
Yeah, I mean, I think that looking too much into that, I mean, look, held under scrutiny, under a microscope, looking into the ins and outs and details of it, it's going to wither a little bit, but it's also not hard sci-fi, right? It's not, I don't think that it's meant to be taken that seriously to where the technical aspects of it are under scrutiny. I think that the themes and the relationship elements and that for me is enough to where I didn't feel like any of it was inauthentic personally. And again, I think it's just really a lot of fun and in one of the more likable movies I've seen this year, period. So so it is one of my 5 favorite movies of the year thus far. I give it a B+.
Look, hold on. Before I go to you, Jocelyn, I just want to say I'm not picking apart the technicalities. I'm picking apart the technicalities that it presents itself and presents as technicalities. So, just so we're clear. I know it's not hard sci-fi, but
I think I tend to give it a little more leeway because it is a romantic comedy. So the sci-fi elements are kind of like you have to take with a grain of salt. And I actually gave it higher than Cody, who loved it so much. I wouldn't put it in my top 5 of the year, but I gave it an A-.
Wow. I'm going to give it a B. I think it's fun. I think it doesn't quite have the heart that I think it wants to have, and it suffers a little bit from being too rushed. But yeah, that is available right now on Hulu, so you can watch that for free. If you have Hulu. Is it on demand too, or is it a Hulu original? I never know what these
Hulu original.
Okay, I never know with these neon things.
Because I mean, this one is neon, but it's being almost completely released by Hulu. So
Okay.
whatever that's.
All right, let's move. Sorry, let's move on to our next movie, Relic.
When was the last time you spoke to her?
It's been a few weeks.
Gran? Mom?
Mom! She called me a few weeks ago. I think she was scared. She thought someone was coming into the house.
Tea?
It's another in a string of Australian movies for us, following Baby Teeth, and I feel like there was another one too recently, but maybe I'm making that up. Jocelyn, tell us about Relic and what you thought of it.
Sure. So this is a horror movie. I saw it a while ago, so I have to kind of go back a little bit. It's a horror movie that follows the main character and her sort of relationship with her mother and her daughter. So at the beginning of the movie, her mother goes missing. She's suffering from like dementia, Alzheimer's. It's that kind of situation. And then there's some strange circumstances that the mother kind of can't let go, of, and her daughter is sort of, I guess, more sensitive to the fact that it's her grandmother, and so there's a lot of kind of struggle with the relationships of these three women. I don't know how much I can say without giving it away, but the grandmother starts really deteriorating fast, and then it turns out that the mother had been right to be concerned, I guess. And it all kind of comes to a head. And then the movie kind of takes on like a metaphorical sort of approach, where you realize that it's sort of all about symbolism, and this is all a metaphor for aging and for, I think, also for like women and that kind of thing. At the end, it sort of felt like this could have been like a women's studies movie that is played. I was not a huge fan of this. I was expecting it to be scary, and it wasn't. It was more sad for me, and and I think there was some good performances inside of it, but the whole thing was sort of a waste of time for me.
Wow, that's pretty harsh.
Sorry.
Cody, what did you think?
Well, so I have this thing where one of my biggest problems with movies in general is especially with maybe even like a horror movie in particular, is the idea that a movie spends 45 minutes to an hour of its 90-minute runtime without anything of consequence happening, or having this bit of repetition that's all leading to something where it doesn't reveal itself until you're 2/3 into the movie. And I think Relic really holds on to its cards way too long. I think it takes about an hour for things to actually happen, and I was bored out of my mind watching that first hour. I think that once it becomes clear what it is trying to say and do, it becomes very heavy-handed. I think the symbolism of everything, you like, once you put together that it's kind of like a treatise on aging, you're like, okay, I get it. It's very painfully obvious. The performances are fine, I guess. Nothing that really stood out to me in particular. There's a climax of the movie that happens like in the walls of a house of indeterminate size. Like I could not get my bearings as to what was happening in those scenes. Like I'm like, where am I? What is happening? Why can't this person find their way out of this thing? Just completely confusing to me. And I think ultimately what it is it's sort of like this metaphorical, symbolic movie that's stuck inside a horror movie that is really reliant on horror imagery and jump scares and things like that. I wasn't very impressed by any of it. I found it to be, again, quite boring, and I think it just takes way too long to reveal itself. So I really was not a fan either.
Yeah, I never really kind of got into it at all. Like, I never really latched on to what was happening or what was really the point of it. And I think I agree with you, Cody. Like you said, it holds its cards really close to the vest for most of the movie. And then I think the reveal is sort of anticlimactic. You know, it doesn't really I don't know. It's like a psychological thriller until it becomes this weird sort of metaphysical thing. Mm-hmm. And the scene inside the walls, while it's freaky and weird, I just don't really quite understand how it all fits together.
Yeah.
And I was just not engaged through the whole thing. And you know, it like Jocelyn, like you said, it's a female director. I think there's like 3 men in the whole movie, and it's the three women are the lead characters, and it's a very female centric story, but it doesn't. I just don't think it delivers enough on its premise to kind of make it worth the time
or interesting.
I mean, it's 90 minutes. Again, it's our 3rd movie in a row that's like 90 minutes on the dot, and it doesn't feel like it does anything with that runtime. Like, it feels like it lasts too long, but then it doesn't really feel like it tells the story that I think it believes it's telling. I don't know. It left me really, really just sort of uninterested the whole time. Like, I watched the whole thing and I never got engaged. But
well, I think part of the thing is that it sort of it kind of evolves into like having some body horror elements, but the metaphor and symbolism of it is so clear and obvious that it doesn't feel clever. I don't think that the reveal of anything or the message of what it's trying to say is clever at all. I think that it's actually kind of obvious in a way, you know.
The wall stuff was comical too. I was like laughing.
Yeah,
it had some
check your mold problem.
It had some freaky elements, like when she goes to the sidewall and like the gravity is switched. I liked that stuff. But again, I just don't know how it fits.
Whenever I see that, I'm like, okay, so you put the camera on a stationary platform and then you turn the room. You know, it's kind of like a cheap gimmick. But it was kind of, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a nice little tool that she pulled out of her little tool belt. But
yeah. Anyway, grades. Jocelyn.
What did I give Relic? Oh, I did a solid D for Relic.
Wow, damn.
Yeah, sorry. When I don't like something, I really don't like it.
You really pull out the knives. Cody.
Yeah, no, that's. I mean, I really didn't like it either, but I didn't go that hard. Yeah, no, I found.
You're a woman, Jocelyn, so you can
exactly.
Talk trash about
I don't
other
have
women.
to, tiptoe around it here.
So yeah, I mean, I found nothing here that was that gripped me in any way, and I didn't like it at all. I gave it a C.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a C too. I just was not engaged with it whatsoever. Yeah, that is available on demand right now. Let's move on to our last movie, Inmate number 1, The Rise of Danny Trejo.
All right, fellas, let's do this. My name's Danny Trejo. You might have seen me once in a while.
Desperado, Heat,
Dusk Till Dawn,
Con Air,
Machete.
They make movies and stories about guys like Danny. Danny is that guy.
Danny was in a high-stakes world from a very young age.
Addicted to heroin since he was 12.
He was just a kid, caught up in the game.
I had a sawed-off shotgun and a hand grenade. I buried him, and I told my mom, be real careful in the backyard.
This is a guy who's seen death just to get to 16 years old.
It's like the Wild West.
You're gonna be a criminal. Be a criminal 24 hours a day.
This is a documentary about a character actor, I would say, Danny Trejo, who, of course, is in a ton of movies and is always a tough guy. Let's see, who started last time? Cody, what did you think of Inmate number 1, The Rise of Danny Trejo?
Well, I think it's a mixed bag for me because I think it's good. I think that it has it's very honest and it's very open. I mean, I don't think that Danny Trejo holds back much here. And I was surprised to find out like what kind of life he lived prior to. I mean, I had heard like just, you know, the random thing where you hear that he was in jail and stuff like that. But then you realize he was like he overdosed on heroin at like 14. And then, you know, you hear stories about, you know, robbing places and you get the sense that he's probably done some shit. And then you also get a sense of like the kind of crime he was in and the jails that he was in and how he, you know, you get stories about how, you know, he narrowly avoided, you know, a possibly much longer sentence through some interesting means. And I think that it does a good job of him telling his own story. It also features talking head interviews with people who know him best, which include some people I didn't know knew him best, like Donald Logue.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, how do they know each other? That seems like a weird thing. And then also his kids are interviewed throughout it, and like people who worked with him in AA and NA. And I think that as a telling about this person's life, just like a life story, it's pretty interesting. I think where I have some disconnect with this movie is that when it's contextualized as being the story of Danny Trejo, the actor, Danny Trejo has no romantic feelings about being an actor or being in the film industry or anything about that at all, right? You get some hint that like he was a big John Wayne fan, but besides that, he makes several mentions about like getting paid, like about the paychecks he gets and, you know, being surprised that you can get paid that much. And even acting was like an accidental thing for him. And even Kiko, who was our old host, he had talked to Danny Trejo a couple weeks ago during an interview and asked him a question about that. I don't know if you saw the interview, but we talked about...
I didn't.
Okay, so we talked about... I said to Kiko, like, don't you get the sense that there's no, like love for the art of filmmaking in here? And so Kiko asked him about that, about, like, the art of filmmaking. And Danny Trejo said something like, Dennis Hopper once told me that art is something you hang on walls. And that was his response. So I think where it fails is and I say fails, I mean, this is his story, so it is what it is. But what makes it less interesting of a story is that there's no romantic feelings about filmmaking or acting or the art of it. And it's not as if acting saved him or anything like that. So talking about his film roles at the end of the day feels a little bit hollow because I don't think that they meant anything to him other than a job, by his own admission. And so I think it's a great story about how someone was so involved with drugs and crime and all of that and turned their life around. But the acting piece, to me, as Danny Trejo, the actor, I think doesn't really have any kind of solid connection for me. It's still, I think, a decent enough documentary, but that piece, I think, is a vital one that's missing.
Jocelyn, how about you?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the point, though. I mean, that's the name of the documentary, Inmate number 1. Like, all he played were these, like, token bad guys in, like, you know, probably hundreds of movies before he got the lead in Machete. And I think that that's sort of not... I don't think that takes away from it at all. The fact that he just kind of, like, fell into this life. I think that's what makes it more fascinating. And I just really, I liked learning more about him. I just happen to think like he's such a cool person, and I think the documentary did a good job of doing that. Like, I met him once and I took away, like, I will often say, like, he was the nicest person. And it's sort of like there's a part in the movie where he's, you know, in his neighborhood, which he still lives in, which I love also. And, you know, it's like a bad part of LA or the valley, not even LA. And he's like, people are walking by and he's asking them how they are. And, you know, he's just like, he seems to really appreciate life. And I got that when I met him. It just seems like he like legitimately is happy to be here and happy. So it was cool to kind of fill in the pieces and see, because he is a recovering addict, that he is sober, that he really does, you know, live every day like this is a gift. And other than that, I thought the only thing that bothered me was the interview with his children, because I mean, it's nice to hear, you know, what they say about their dad, but they're retelling parts of his life that they weren't even alive for. So that to me was a little odd, because I'm like, okay, so you've heard this secondhand and now you're adding to the story, or you're retelling what he has told you about his life. So that for me, I'm like, okay, that's a little weird. I would much rather hear like stories that they personally, you know, lived, and they do that too. But then hearing about things that happened before they were alive just was a little strange for me. But then other than that, I really enjoyed it. I loved learning even more about him.
Yeah, I've met him once or twice, I believe once. I hosted a panel with him at Alamo City Comic-Con. He was very, very nice. You know, he's I don't think I have to tell either of you that he was very much in his element in San Antonio, because you know, he's, you know, with a huge Hispanic population, and I may have mentioned this before. He talks like my father-in-law. I mean, he like, it's the same sort of goofy dad jokes, and the same sort of like he tells a story in the film about when he first gets out of jail, and he is approached by his uncle, who also just got out of jail, who's like a drug dealer. And as Danny's trying to go straight, his uncle gives him like 2 bags of heroin and $1,000, and he tells him like, hey, fuck you, I can't take this. And he's like, well, I still kept the $1,000 and I ran to the back. So like, that's a funny story, and it's a very dad joke, and it reminds me, like I said, of my father-in-law. It's the kind of story he would tell. Not that he was a drug addict or anything, but just sort of that same vibe of like, you know, well, I kept the money, I'm not stupid. But I think the biggest thing about it that bothered me was the kind of performance of it all. And I think that everything is really performed. And I get it, they're all actors that they're talking to, but like, the talking head stuff, I feel was very written, like especially everything Donald Logue said.
Yeah.
It just sounded like there's no way Donald Logue knew him in, you know, in the 60s. I think Donald Logue is probably 50 tops. And, you know, I mean, I'm sure they're friends, and I'm sure he's told them the stories, but it sounds like they're reciting parts of the story that they were told to recite. I think Michelle
Rodriguez.
Yeah, has, you know, like an actual like anecdotal story that she was there for, but I feel like everyone else is telling these stories, and like you mentioned, Jocelyn, with his kids, they're telling them like third hand. Right. You know, these aren't stories they were there for, and I think like Robert Rodriguez and Michelle Rodriguez are telling the two people telling stories that are like directly related, like directly interactions they had with him. And I don't feel like anyone else, and Cheech Marin I think is too, but other people, I feel like it's just a big performance, and that really is kind of a turnoff to me in the documentary format, because it feels too fake. That said, I don't really care if he's likes the art of acting. Cody, this was in the deleted. This was in an aside, right? That you and I talked about on our other podcast, Quarren Stream, with
Santos
Montano, who's a member of a band called Old Man Gloom, and he's also a prop guy in New York. And he said that I don't think I'm talking out of turn telling the story, because it's a delightful story, that Danny Trejo came in to shoot this. It's a Jim Henson production thing, some sort of puppet show. I can't remember what it's called. And he first of all, they told him, and the movie kind of hints at this, that either like, oh, watch, when he comes in, he'll talk to the puppets on the table. Like, he'll be like, hey, what's up, Miss Piggy, and stuff. And he tells a story of how when he's shooting the Muppets Most Wanted is when his mom dies, and the the performer, the Muppeteer who does Kermit, came over to his face and said, like, "I'm sorry about your mom." And I thought, like, that's a weird thing to do as the guy who plays Kermit, but it was a funny little story. And then he also said that he carries around bacon in his pockets in case he ever runs across a dog, which I thought was just great. Part. That was my favorite part of that story. Is it he's always got bacon in his pockets in case he runs across a dog, and you see his love of dogs in the movie. Like he talks about it when he first got out of prison. So he seems like a very nice guy, and you know that experience in person was the same. You know, I don't know that it's a really remarkable story. It's just sort of a story of a guy who cleaned up his act and then got lucky being in movies because he looks like a badass. You know, I don't think his acting career is anything revelatory. I mean, he's a welcome presence in most movies, and I think it's, you know, he's you know, one of the most recognizable character actors I think out there right now. But I don't know that, you know, he doesn't seem to really care about acting, as it were, and he doesn't, you know, seem to be doing it for anything more than the paycheck, and that's fine. Who cares?
Also, one of the most successful Mexican actors, you know? I mean, I think that's a big part of it, too, is that before him, like, he had no one to look up to who looked like him.
Yeah, he was talking about, is it Jose Gonzalez in the John Wayne movies, which, yeah, it's probably the one Mexican actor of his generation, or, you know, when he was a kid, not of his generation. But, yeah, I think it's just a little too performed for my taste, and that's the only real complaint I have about it. Grades, Cody, what'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would say ultimately at the end of the day, it's probably like one cut above a DVD extra. Like, I think it's fine, but it's not anything special. So I would probably give it a B-, just barely recommendable.
Jocelyn.
Yeah, I think I would probably give it a C, but I would recommend it to people because I think it is interesting, especially if
you can't do that. You can't give it a C and recommend it.
I'm not. I said I want to give it a C, but I want to recommend it. So I haven't given my grade yet.
Oh.
So
I mean, it's at least B- now. So I mean, you've spoiled that.
Yeah. Thanks, Jerrod.
Sorry.
No, I'm not going to talk about it. No. But
look, I forgot to put this thing in. Sorry.
Oh, cool.
God damn it.
Look at you.
I had this.
You totally redeemed yourself.
Oh, look at that. Look at it go. Look at it go.
I love it. It's a ticker. Anyway, so yes, I think if you know who he is, if you're vaguely interested in the types of movies that he has made, also if you just want to hear some like really kind of funny stories that he has that are kind of like behind the scenes of Hollywood, I would recommend it. So B-.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a B- too. I think it's fine. It's the longest movie that we reviewed this week, by the way. It's like an hour and 48 minutes.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a little self-indulgent. Like I think, you know, the guy who's like his head of security is like my least favorite guy they interview because I don't get it. Like he's just another tough ass dude. I love that old man, the old man who was also in prison. Yeah.
They don't really explain who he is, do they?
Yeah, I kind of wish they would. He's just like his NA sponsor, and he was also an inmate, but I don't think they were in jail together. There was a few people that I wasn't
really sure who they were that were talking.
Well, there was the guy that owned the barbecue place, or was it not a barbecue place, like a body shop or something? Chubby's.
There was a woman that I think maybe is one of his daughters.
There was his sister. And his daughter.
Sister. I think it must have been
his sister was like, I've been in jail too. Like, wow, she was she was a tough old bird too. Yeah, and I love that his the story that his tattoo is from a tamale wrapper. Anyway, did I say my grade? B-.
Yeah.
That's gonna do it for this week. Next week, Cody, what do we got?
Well, there's a few movies, nothing super high profile. We have Showbiz Kids, which is an HBO documentary that Alex Winter made about like child actors. So it features stuff from like Mara Wilson and I can't remember who else is. Will Wheaton is in it. A couple of others, and then it shows like some current child actors, and so it's a documentary on that. There's a movie from Sony Pictures Classics called The Climb that comes out. And then there's a couple movies that are in the mix. We'll probably do 4, including one of these 2 movies. And then, Jocelyn, I'm so sorry, but Jerrod...
Chameleon 2?
Yes, basically. I'm going to commit right now that we're going to review Money Plane.
Okay.
I can't believe we overlooked it this week.
I know.
It's been released this week, but it's apparently a bonkers ass like heist movie starring Kelsey Grammer.
I already like it.
No, we'll see.
Is it money on a plane?
I think it's like an armored plane or something.
Okay,
if
so
I'm getting
like
it.
a plane. Like
Yeah.
on a plane.
Yeah.
Not like the geometrical
Right.
plane.
That's
yeah. Yeah, we've seen like shut up, Cody.
Oh, you can see me now. I forgot.
we saw like I saw something on the Ringer about it. I think you sent me a link, Cody, from somewhere else.
I sent you a clip of something. And
that's right.
Yeah. Which looks bad.
Anyway, so we'll talk about that one.
Bad movie.
Yeah. So if you want to reach us, you can email us at podcast@cinesnob.net. You can find us on Twitter @CineSnob, Facebook CineSnob Critic. Also, you can listen to our other podcasts, Re-MCU, where we are rewatching the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. Also, Quarantine Stream. We've got our second part with comedian Vanessa Gonzalez coming up Tuesday, right, Cody?
Mm-hmm.
That's when we're releasing it. We get into a lot of Master Pancake talk in that one, which is a lot of fun. You're familiar with Master Pancake, right, Jocelyn?
It's not still around, is it?
Oh yeah, no,
Oh.
they're doing live stream shows now.
Nice.
She's doing one for what is it called? 911 Lone Star.
Yeah.
It's the Rob Lowe one set in Austin. The Rob Lowe,
with
like
the tornadoes and stuff.
Yes. So her and 2 of the people from Master Pancake are watching it every week and riffing on it live. So, anything else, Cody?
Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, you can find me on The Ramble with Jerry Roach and Eddie Pence. We are moving to video format as well on that one, so you can.
They have been doing that video with Jerry and Eddie, right? You just haven't been on video.
Yeah, they have something called Ramble Radio that's also video. And
I thought they were all. I don't know.
Yeah,
sorry.
But now I'm included on the video side of that thing. So yeah.
You're not just a head over the naked Tom Selleck body.
Burt Reynolds, but yes, I'm not no longer.
Oh, I thought that was. Oh, yeah. I guess they're the same. They're both hairy.
They're interchangeable.
Jocelyn, what are you doing there in your map room?
Yeah, nothing. Every week. I need
Gotta
to
get that
create
plug
a
in
fake
for nothing.
Podcast. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Come up with an idea and we'll do it, Jocelyn.
I'll plug my social media.
Talk to your dog on the podcast.
You can find me on Instagram. Oh, that dog. I'm gonna go.
God. What? What are you gonna do?
Peter's gonna get mad at me. I'm gonna go spank him. I was gonna say kick, but he is spoiled rotten.
You have 2 dogs, though, right?
I do, and one's an angel, and one is he was an only child for like 10 years, so he's a nightmare.
Classic. Yeah, and Cody's cat is probably somewhere causing trouble over there.
Oh, she's
so
on the couch now. She's resting comfortably.
I could talk about
look at her.
I could talk about animals forever. What's your cat's name, Cody?
Mickey.
Aw, that's adorable.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go to Disney World.
Yeah.
Speaking of that.
It's
on that note.
It's reopened, but hey, it's crazy. And I can't imagine like going there when you have to be not around a bunch of people because it's so big.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Anyway, yeah, my cats are outside the door because I have a door I can close. Anything else before we go ahead?
With the fancy brags and the flexing.
I got a door. I'm in a separate room.
How many doors does your house have? That's what I want to know.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I mean, that's why
6,
I put mine in frame because I wanted to show
7,
them
8.
off.
Yes, you're showing.
Are we counting? Are we counting like
Cody's flexing
closet
with his doors.
Are we counting closet doors and cabinet doors too?
Doors that I have. Sorry.
No.
Do you have any pocket doors?
What?
Do you know what a pocket door is? It's the door that slides into the wall.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I don't.
Do you have a sliding glass door at your apartment?
No.
Or do you have a door?
I have like
I
have what are they called? The doors that open out both
French
ways.
doors.
French doors. I have French doors.
Oh, now who's all bougie with his French doors?
Yeah.
My husband thinks that's funny that we call those French doors.
What do they call them?
They just like
in
I
France.
think they just call them just
They're just doors.
Yeah.
and like toast and.
Oh yeah.
Fries.
Oh, he hates French bread at HEB. He was like, "This is not French bread." He gets very angry about.
He was
French
wearing his. Was he wearing his stripe? Was he wearing his stripy shirt and had a big long cigarette?
Like holding a baguette, being like, "This is French bread."
This is not French bread.
This is not French bread.
Does your husband have a stripe? Does your husband have a stripy mime shirt?
No. I mean, I'm sure. Yeah, he has some striped shirts, but.
But I mean, like the tight,
No.
Does he have a beret?
Yes. Legitimately, that is one stereotype that is there, and we always have lots of cheese in our fridge.
What's with Europeans and smoking, by the way?
That's an excellent question.
When we were in Japan, there was a bunch of Irish pricks there on a tour we were on, and they were smoking like chimneys. Yeah, it was annoying.
Yeah, I mean the French love to smoke. Yeah. I think it's because they have universal health care, so why not?
Is that why?
Yeah.
That's airtight.
Sure. They all want coronavirus.
No, I read something that smokers are like less likely to get it for some reason. I swear. I think he sent it to me. It must have been French propaganda. It was definitely like
it was like
Marlboro.
It was like
sponsored by the tobacco industry.
Whatever the Fox News of France is.
Anyway.
All right. So on that note, I'm Jerrod Kingery.
I'm Cody Villafana.
And I'm Jocelyn Durand.